In this video essay, I will be explaining why I believe Chris Chibnall is the most underrated and underappreciated showrunner of Doctor Who. Doctor Who could be described as a contradiction in and of itself. It is always one thing and the opposite thing at the same time. It is a bigger on the inside box. It is an old man in a young woman's body. And this was how Chris Chibnall opened his journey into the show. When Chris Chibnall took on the show, he always planned to do 5 years, mainly because his sons were doing their exams in the 5th year, and he wanted to be clear of the show. He knew that the show would take over your life. He had seen it happen with Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat, and he accepted this element of the show, and he wanted to be out and free so that he could have his family life in this 5th year. And so he made a deal with Jodie Whittaker. They would both be part of an era that would start and end with the regeneration of her Doctor, and they would leave in 2022 after creating 5 years of Doctor Who. After crunching the numbers, they figured out it would be possible to make a series every 18 months. 3 series. But Chris Chibnall wanted to make sure his childhood dream of being the Doctor Who showrunner was not missed out on. No stone unturned, no detail unchecked. His era was planned out from the start. Episodes could change, actors could drop in and out, and classic characters could be dipped in and out. But the main aim of this arc was planned from the start to make sure that it would fit perfectly.
Yeah, I don't know. For us, for this season, you work it out in advance. There's a great quote from David Lynch, which is you plan rigorously and allow for happy accidents.
For my understanding is he's got a very specific vision. Everything's mapped out. Nothing's by accident, right?
No.
Like he's figured out exactly the story he wants to tell. When you're working with someone with that like precise vision, how much room is left for banter or for you to bring some of yourself to the character?
Not impossible. I think we know the story arc, but a lot of it is a reveal because even to us it's secretive, isn't it? Yeah. But you know from the beginning, I imagine you knew what the journey was of the character, and then naturally there's little bits that come in or that it's tweaked and whatever, but they don't then change the whole story arc. So for us as actors, we can go, right, we're going to start episode here, and then my journey is X, Y, and Z. I don't know when it's going to come up and what episodes and how, but at least I know I'm going on that.
The first part of the plan was an introduction to new fans. He had seen that some elements of the show had pushed new fans away, that it had got too involved in the canon and the history of the show, and this stopped new fans joining, and he wanted his era to be the start of something new, for new audiences.
And that for us is this year on Doctor Who, is to go, whether you know it inside out, whether you've been a fan since the Leisure Hive, Dan, or whether you've never seen it, but you heard it and you've got your mates or your family talking about it. We want everybody to come in and we're recruiting. This is a big recruiting video for Doctor Who.
And so to avoid new fans being off-put by the amount of canon that predecessed his show, he decided to create a clean slate. Start anew by having a new cast, a new crew, and no returning monsters until the New Year special.
It's a lot of new stuff this year. I mean, we've got 10 standalone stories. We've got lots of new villains, lots of new monsters, lots of new characters for you to fall in love with. And I think, my big message to you guys out here, you got to help us, because obviously we know how much you love the show, and it's like this year is the perfect jumping on point for that person in your life who has never watched Doctor Who, and I want you to go out there and recruit that person and go and sit them down for Jodie's first episode so you can go, see?
However, he did of course want to bring back elements of the show that the fans would notice, the new audience would not. For example, quotes such as cheap and nasty time travel.
There'll be little things here and there which you guys are going to spot because, we have a lot of love for the show and a lot of knowledge for the show, but as much as anything, I think our job is, where does the show go next?
He also wanted to make sure that these new and returning members of the crew were fans of the show, so that fans could feel that the show was being protected from the inside by people who knew what they were doing. This involved the casting of Pete McTeague as one of his writers, and Rebecca Trotman as one of the editors. In Spyfall, when the master drumbeat was heard, Rebecca Trotman decided to use the original sound from Series 3 for the drumbeat. Chris Chibnall said that this was a thing that only a fan would think of doing. As part of Chris Chibnall's new model, he wanted to create more diversity in the crew. He felt it was important to cast female writers, female directors, female producers, to make sure that the first female Doctor was not only an image for the show, a marketing tool for feminism, but actually this was being done in a real-world level. Among this talent, while being diverse, also included many first-timers. Chris Chibnall had rubbed the slate clean, removing most of the existing team of Doctor Who that had been on the show since 2005, while giving new producers, directors and writers a chance, potentially some of them at their very first TV opportunity. He also wanted to make sure that the show reflected the modern day, to make sure that the audience felt reflected in the show, that it was not some show being produced in 1963 with different moral and different diversity values, and bring the show into 2018.
Yes, it is, and embarrassingly, it's the two white guys who are going to answer the question about representation, which is awkward. Yeah, it is. I mean, that's again what we were talking about. What does Doctor Who look like in 2018? What does it look for the next few years? And that was it. So it was about that on the writing team, on the directing team, in the edit suites, across the production, and on screen as well. Yes. So there is a lot of diversity in our casting.
He also decided to use new film cameras, new visual effects companies, to make the show able to compete with new shows that the show hadn't really been considering for some time. Apple TV, Netflix, Disney+, to make sure that the show could really compete with the modern age and felt it belonged in 2018. However, while Chris Chibnall wanted to modernise the show, he also wanted to keep the core elements, taking the show right back to an unearthly child in 1963. This began with his use of a TARDIS team, 3 companions, and a 4th character, the Doctor, taking it right back to the origins of the show.
But also we're taking it right back to the start of Doctor Who. You know, the very first episode of Doctor Who, it's like 3 companions and the Doctor going on adventures in time and space, so we're reconnecting with that DNA of the very first episode, but also hopefully making it for 2018 and the world we all live in. Just put that world on screen, basically.
Yeah.
This involved Ryan Sinclair with dyspraxia, something Chris Chibnall took very seriously.
And then you've got Ryan, who's a warehouse worker, and he's got dyspraxia, and he is at a point in his life where his personal life is being challenged.
Having family members and friends with dyspraxia, he took a lot of effort into researching this journey to make it natural and realistic and respectful to the dyspraxic community.
My nephew has dyspraxia. I have friends with kids with dyspraxia. We did a screening at Sheffield recently to launch the show. A couple of journalists there came up to me and said, "Oh, I have dyspraxia." We worked with the Dyspraxia Foundation in the UK and talked to them. And also, but to your point about that, yeah, that's not an episodic story, and that finishes at the end of that episode for Ryan. It will carry on. It's a part of him, but it's also, and I want to phrase this right. There are lots of defining parts to Ryan, and that is one of them. And you know, I don't have the condition, so I can't speak to it as well as you can. But when we talk about heroes come in all shapes and sizes, that's what we mean.
Yasmin Khan, the overall companion planned across the 3 series that would become the main companion of his era.
Yeah, Mandip, who plays Yaz, is a very strong and confident, and she's a trainee police officer, and she feels like she's got a lot of potential and she's not getting challenged enough.
And Graham O'Brien, played by Bradley Walsh. He, in many ways, is the audience surrogate. He's the one that the audience would cling on to, and this was very, very intentional, because Chris Chibnall knew that some of the diverse elements of the show would put people off. And so the wildcard, Bradley Walsh, was introduced, somebody who knew the public loved, and somebody who knew was incredibly talented, that could be the hook for viewers, somebody to cling on to while the show is going through this change with the female Doctor and the new crew. The stage was set for his era. It's reasonable to say that the first 3 episodes of any new showrunner and any new Doctor are a mission statement. It is the showrunner saying, "This is how I want my era to be remembered." The first episode, a modern Earth story following a simple formula that had been tried and tested before. The second, a futuristic space battle on a planet desolation, showing off the show's new style of action, visual effects, and standards that we'd never seen before in Doctor Who. The mission statement of this is a show that can compete with anything out there, Hollywood films or brand new TV series. This is a show that will stand up to the standards of the day, but also live into the future. And Rosa, a mission statement of the series' original intent to be an educational show. Chris Chibnall wanted to make sure that his historical characters were people who had not been explored before, so that we could learn new lessons, so that the audience could hear about historical figures that hadn't been mentioned in the past.
She's the boss woman, right?
You do remember what she did?
Yeah. First black woman to ever drive a bus.
No, Ryan.
But also to bring historical figures to life that had been forgotten by history. Characters that deserved more recognition than they were getting.
He's a famous inventor, isn't he, Doc?
Yeah? And what did he invent?
Well, he invented the whatchamacallit? Tell him, Doc.
He dies penniless. History leaves him behind. That's not right. People should know.
People like Ada Lovelace, Nikola Tesla, Mary Shelley, and Rosa Parks. Rosa, in particular, was a mission statement. We are taking equality seriously, but also we're not going to shy away from taking risks to do the right thing.
I think the Doctor is a great symbol of unity, and when the Doctor can be male or female, and also gender non-binary as well, and there are all kinds of. I think the most important thing is for my kids growing up that they know they can look up to men and women, and that heroes come in all shapes and sizes and genders and sexualities and ethnicities. And that's basic. Like, that's rule number one for the world. And I hope this season of Doctor Who shows you that. And I hope you enjoy episode 3.
Creating Rosa, Chris Chibnall knew that it was important to get the background right. As Tosin Cole said in an interview about if they were nervous about doing Rosa, he said, "No risk, no reward." A phrase I feel encapsulates Chris Chibnall's era as showrunner. It would have been rather contradictory to have written such a powerful story about black history without reflecting this in the crew. So Chris Chibnall hired Mallory Blackman to co-write the episode with him, not only adding her intimate knowledge of Rosa Parks and black history, but also casting the first ever person of colour to write the series. A trend that would follow his later historicals also, with Demons of the Punjab, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, The Witchfinders, and others, involving writers that were more versed in the subject matter than Chris Chibnall was. With Rosa's episode, there was a challenge, trying to make sure that the Doctor was able to learn about Rosa Parks without interfering with the story. The difficulty being that the Doctor couldn't change history because that would take the onus away from Rosa Parks, but also had to find a way to educate the audience by intervening with the story. Krasko was created. In Chris Chibnall's own classic series style, I suppose he could be compared to the Time Meddler, a character that would help the Doctor create the Rosa Parks situation on the bus without altering history, because Krasko would be trying to alter history. This technique meant that the audience got all the information that they needed, while also not interfering with the truth of the story. This was a mission statement, and with this first 3 episodes, was set the stage the entirety of the Chris Chibnall era. Phase 2 of Chris Chibnall's master plan was now set, taking these new audience members and showing them the past of the show, the midpoint of the story arc. He used his intimate knowledge of the past of Doctor Who, episodes such as The Brain of Morbius, The Deadly Assassin, as well as unmade stories that would have happened after the show's original end in survival. A story that would explain the Doctor is not who they think they are. They were somebody before they were the Doctor, and this would make the Doctor question who they thought they were and who they actually are, and whether they could cope with the difference. The brilliance of this plan is that it works on all the levels that the show had already set out. The Time Lord's liking for manipulating people, the Master's desire to be the same as the Doctor, but only on the condition that the Doctor becomes the same as the Master, and the Doctor's insecurity with themselves as a person. The Doctor would learn that they were not the person they thought they were, that there were aspects of their being that were entirely a mystery to them. The genius of this plan was that it changed the Doctor's backstory. It meant that we were given a new mystery, but yet the original backstory was not removed. Everything that had happened previously was still there. It simply means that we go further back than we thought.
I remember growing up, I remember you and me at the academy together.
That happened. It just wasn't your first life.
For a show that is all about mystery, the title itself being evident of that, we now knew less than we had known since 1969. The show had been put truly back in the dark and reset. With this plan came introducing new fans to old monsters and bringing those monsters into 2020. He brought back the characters respectfully, both in terms of their characteristics, homaging to their past plots, but also in their looks. Rather than a total redesign, their depiction as characters and their depiction as costumes kept a lot of respect for the classic, both bringing them into the 21st century, but being perhaps the most respectful of their original that there had ever been. Something that I found rather impressive in Series 12 was the levity with which he used the classic monsters. With characters such as the Master, the Judoon, Captain Jack, the Cybermen, the Time Lords, Gallifrey, it would be quite easy to feel this was overloading the show with canon. Chibnall was very careful about what monsters he used. He had planned to use some characters from the start, such as Captain Jack, the Weeping Angels, and the Sontarans, but he knew the effect of having the perfect script for the perfect monster. He made sure the storylines were written first, and then the monster that fit best was used. This meant that every character felt perfectly needed in every script. They always felt like they were being used to serve the plot rather than for fan service. Their use of dotting them throughout the series across contrasting stories meant that they always felt fresh and new, and we also felt that no two stories were the same. For example, Can You Hear Me was deliberately written next to the mid-series arc and the finale to make sure that the audience got a breath of fresh air, so that they never felt they were watching the same tonal episode twice. Chris Chibnall wanted to ensure that no one got left behind in this plan, to make sure that both new fans and classic fans felt involved. This was something that Chris Chibnall took very seriously. He wanted every level to be hit in every episode. Comedy, scares, sadness, shocks. He wished to ensure that every level of emotion was touched upon in every episode, making sure that no episode ever stood still and went static. In an interview here, Mandeep Gill expressed how the funny and the serious were combined.
How do you balance being respectful to this storyline, but also finding that fun Who stuff to fold in there? How do you live in that area and straddle that line?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of it is already written for you. For instance, the Rosa Parks episode, when you're in the little motel and it's something serious, that guy comes in, he's racist, but previous to that, you're on that bed going, "Am I Banksy?" And writing on the wall, like, a lot of it's already in there because it's written by the most amazing, talented writers.
Series 12 was a message that we're at the midpoint of the Chris Chibnall 5-year plan. This was a show that would encapsulate everything the show could do best. Chris Chibnall would make sure this era would be remembered as one of the most ambitious the show had ever done. And with the canon of the show about to change forever, it was time for the third part of the master plan. With Chris Chibnall's desire to create lots of twists in his story, the marketing was struggling. Series 11 had mostly survived on the shock of the new female Doctor and the audience wanting to see what a new showrunner would do. However, this was not going to last forever, and Chris Chibnall wanted to make sure that every shock, every twist, every mystery was entirely unexpected. This meant that marketing was a challenge. With the twist of Ruth's fugitive Doctor in the wings, as well as the return of Captain Jack, there was an opportunity to create a distraction. There was a way to make this shock even more surprising, giving us the Judoon. He decided on a publicity stunt. sending the Judoon into the public world, even publicising where they would be filmed in the episode, to bring the show back into the public eye. Similarly, when COVID-19 struck in 2020, the show was going to be off air for a lot longer than perhaps planned. Chris Chibnall, while writing scripts, saw an opportunity, which Jodie Whittaker agreed. The Doctor could be used as the face of the NHS to give out COVID information. With the script sent off to Jodie Whittaker's house, she recorded her own Doctor message to the children of the UK.
Basically, I think somebody somewhere might be a little bit worried. I'm actually just self-isolating, or as I like to call it, hiding from an army of Sontarans.
Followed by a series of COVID guideline announcements.
From one doctor on behalf of every doctor, nurse, carer and frontline worker, please remember these important rules.
With Comic Relief creating their Big Night In campaign, it was obvious that Jodie Whittaker would have to be involved.
2020, the movie.
No, they're clapping for us. They're clapping for the carers. But yeah, Bake Off is about to start. We better get a move on.
Using every available actor to play the Doctor. This sketch would set out to be a heartwarming message to the children, as well as perhaps the biggest moment of fan service in the show's history.
As you probably know,
We have all been, at one time or another,
The Doctor.
Chris Chibnall knew that the show was moving into the modern age. It had been his MO since the beginning, and he needed his publicity to fit this. The Find the Doctor game was set, the promotion for Series 13 that would see moments of the Doctor dripped into public life, almost as a Pokemon Go of Doctor Who publicity. And then the shot to the heart, an actual hologram of a Sontaran ship. Doctor Who was coming back for the final part of the Chibnall master plan. And on to the final point of the 3-series plan, Series 13, the point where the revelations found by the Doctor would take effect, where it would be decided what effect the information the Doctor had learned would have on her.
It's really important, I think, in any era of Doctor Who for the Doctor to have an emotional journey, to have an arc, and to start one place and go on a voyage of discovery through their time on the show. And I always knew this was going to be the arc for Jodie's Doctor, and that the 3rd series would be about exploring the fallout from the information she got at the end of The Timeless Children.
Now it was time for the conclusion, the ending of the 3-series plan with Series 13. The series was always intended to be the same as previously, 10 episodes and a New Year special. However, disaster struck. With the COVID-19 bursting through the film industry, it became obvious that the show could not go on as normal. With actors having to bubble up, new restrictions in terms of the amount of people in a room, and the amount of COVID protection required, the show could not go on with the same time and the same budget, producing the same amount of episodes. Chris Chibnall knew he wanted to finish the 3-series plan, and the BBC wanted it completed too. Numbers were crunched, and Chris Chibnall decided it was possible to make the episode count go down from 11 to 8. He was left with a decision. How would these episodes look?
There were 2 ways you could go. You can go, we're just going to do lots of tiny episodes in one room with no monsters, or we can throw down the gauntlet and go, we're going to do the biggest story we've ever done.
For a showman like Chris Chibnall, who wanted every episode to be the best it could possibly be, the answer was simple. He would use this situation to his advantage and create the most cinematic 8 hours of Doctor Who ever written. Partway down the line, the BBC then asked if they could have another episode for the BBC Centenary in 2022, celebrating 100 years of the BBC. He crunched the numbers and came back with Eve of the Daleks, moving 2 of the Flux episodes, The Legend of the Sea Devils and Jodie's Regeneration, into 2022 with it, turning Flux into a 6-part story with 3 specials to follow. Chris Chibnall realised that he could reuse actors, bubble up actors, work out how much protection they would need against COVID-19, and figured out how many characters would be available in one set, with social distancing allowed. When Chris Chibnall embarked on the series, he wanted to create a show that would survive into the future. With TV evolving so quickly, he needed to write a show that would not only survive his era, but survive the future. And this was Flux.
And we're going to go to all kinds of different places. We're going to have all kinds of characters and monsters, and it's all going to be part of a bigger whole. I think it's definitely the most ambitious thing we've done since we've been on the series, would you say? It's pretty epic and ambitious, and we do go to a lot of places.
Chris Chibnall's flair for the show, his desire to make every scene the best it could possibly be, can be described in many ways, but to give a tangible example, I would point out the TARDIS materializations. There have been many ways to dematerialize the TARDIS in the past. It originally began with just a simple crossfade between two pieces of film. Then later camera moves were added with zooms in the Tom Baker era. And even in the 1980s, there was a system of moving a camera shot, locking it off, and then adding in the TARDIS, giving the illusion of a single moving moment. However, for the Chris Chibnall era, they would have to go one better. The TARDIS actually landing in a moving take. Every single shot of the TARDIS materializing, every single one, is done in a moving shot. Often with the Doctor actually stepping out in the ending. This gives the illusion that the impossible is possible. And I feel this example encapsulates Chris Chibnall's attitude to the show. Do everything that has to be done to make the show the best it can possibly be. But Chris Chibnall's flair of the show did not simply extend to the writing. He wanted to make sure that every department was doing the best that they could to create the best show that could possibly be made. And a very important factor of this was the visual effects. Unable to create the episodes as originally planned, not able to go to foreign countries, he decided to use everything in its ante to compensate, employing the film company Double Negative's TV division, Zodiac VFX, and WizKid Ben Pickles to create the most sensational visual effects possible. Recalling the process, Double Negative described Chris Chibnall's approach as far as the eye can see. Recalling how even the scene in the Halloween apocalypse, a scene that would have been potentially overlooked by other writers, was even still created to be the best it could possibly be. The visual effects teams agreed that having such a visionary as Chris Chibnall create the ideas for their visual effects really helped. For example, the scene with the TARDIS in the sky with the Daleks. Ben Pickles said this kind of moment made Chris Chibnall stand out in his ideas, and that a lesser writer wouldn't have made it so incredible to look at. Set designers create incredible worlds. The costume designer, dropping in details after details after details to make every costume perfect, even to the point where the audience might not notice it.
Let's take a look at Ray Holman's design. Starting with these gloves, I mean, it just tells you everything you need to know.
And it's interesting now that he's in charge of creating a look for all the aliens as well. It's interesting seeing that sort of like unity of design there.
He's really open to any ideas that you have. That's the great thing. This is a kind of collaborative process.
When I saw it, I was just like, bam, that's the character.
And once that costume's on, it's done 90% of the work for me because it looks so amazing.
And his CGI teams collaborating to create the most incredible alien worlds that is impossible not to spot. This dedication to detail, I feel, encapsulates Chris Chibnall's ethic towards showrunning Doctor Who. To take every measure possible to create the best show he can possibly make. To make his show the margin against which the greatness of future series will be judged. So that is my video essay. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I want to thank everyone who made it to the end. That is why, in my personal opinion, Chibnall is the show's most underrated showrunner. Goodbye for now.